Rise of the Beast is out in cinemas now, and here's my spoiler review.
Prime. This is about the fate of all living things.
Is it better than the Michael Bay Transformers rubbish that we've been subjected to over the last decade? Does Optimus Prime say Autobots roll out? And does it have an ancient artifact which opens up a giant space portal? Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, then perhaps come back later. I think it's only right for us to start by comparing Rise of the Beasts to the previous 5 Michael Bay Transformers films. Yes, 5, I know. How did it go on for so long? Like most people, I like the original Transformers with Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox. Sure, it wasn't art, but it was competent. It had great fight sequences, and with a breakout film for LaBeouf and Fox. Then with each following Transformers film, it went downhill, and became more and more convoluted, as each new film had the exact same plot, but with significantly worse characters. The plot went somewhat like this: revive Megatron, find an ancient artifact which would bring the world to an end, and then Optimus would level up and save the day, while protecting Shia LaBeouf or Mark Wahlberg. Now these plot elements are pretty much all in there for Rise of the Beasts, but tweaked enough to make it feel fresh. Now in case like me, you were completely confused as to where Rise of the Beasts fits in the Transformers movie timeline. It's a sequel to 2018's Bumblebee, which takes place 20 years before the Michael Bay Transformers films. Meaning it's definitely, probably, a reboot of the franchise. I say definitely because Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts changes many events that took place in Transformers, such as when Bumblebee and the Autobots first landed on Earth, which would mean it's a completely different universe entirely to the Bay films. But I say possibly because none of the creators have actually said whether Rise of the Beasts is a reboot or not. Potentially because they don't want to alienate Michael Bay fans if they said that this was a fresh new reboot, but essentially it is a fresh new reboot. New cast, new Autobots, and a new time period, but with some returning voice actors, notably Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime. So here's a quick summary of the plot before we go into my thoughts on the film. We start off by being introduced to Unicron, a planet-eating robot, with the singular aim to consume all planets. Unicron's minions, led by Peter Dinklage's Scourge, destroy Optimus Primal, the Gorilla Transformers planet, with only a few Maximals escaping its destruction. These Maximals escaping the planet take with them the Transwarp Key, which if it falls into the hands of Unicron, he'll be able to destroy all planets in the universe, starting with Earth. We are then introduced to Shia's replacement, Noah, who is an ex-military electronics expert who has a sick younger brother, and Elena, who works at the museum where the plot device, the Transwarp Key, is found. Noah befriends the Autobot Mirage, voiced by Pete Davidson. I mean, how is Pete Davidson a voice actor now? Last month it was Awkwafina as Scuttle in the Little Mermaid remake. And this month it's Pete Davidson as Mirage in Transformers.
He eats planets, so like way bigger than a planet.
Now how do these actors with such annoying voices get voiceover roles? Anyway, Noah and Mirage have a similar relationship to that of Bumblebee and Shia's in the 2007 Transformers movie. Elena accidentally activates the Transwarp Key, which alerts Unicron's minions, the Terracons, to Earth, and they fight against the Autobots, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Mirage and RC, who are all protecting Noah and Elena. Bumblebee is seemingly killed in a battle by Scourge, and then he leaves, as Air-Razor, the Maximal, attacks him and the rest of the Terracons. Scourge takes what turns out to be half of the Transwarp Key. Elena says she knows where the other half is, and they all head to Peru. They meet the Maximals, and once again clash against Scourge, Nightwing and Battletrap. Scourge infects Air-Razor, and she turns over the second half of the key to Scourge. Optimus Primal puts Air-Razor out of her misery, and with Noah's inspiring words not to give up, the Autobots, Maximals, and humans, Noah and Elena, team up to take on Scourge as he activates the Transwarp portal. Unicron is being brought through the gateway opened up by the space portal, and Mirage seemingly dies, whilst taking on Scourge and protecting Noah from the Terracons' attacks. Bumblebee is then revived by the giant energy blast from the portal and takes out Nightwing, and then Optimus takes out Scourge with the help of Iron Man Noah. Mirage transfers his parts to Noah and they form a suit of armour around him. Scourge is defeated by Optimus in a classic Optimus takedown way by cutting his arms off and then cutting off his head. Elena couldn't stop the gateway fully opening and Unicron is about to devour the Earth, but Optimus destroys the gateway and it looks like he sacrifices himself in the process. But Iron Man Noah and Optimus Primal save Prime, and they all live happily ever after. Until the next world-ending artifact is found in a few months' time, I guess. Noah then goes to a job interview and finds out that, big spoilers ahead for the next Transformers movie, the interviewer is in fact Agent Burke, who tries to recruit Noah into G.I. Joe, teasing a crossover between the franchises in the future. Oh, and Mirage is fixed and is now not in fact dead. Hooray.
You looking good, man? There you go, now we're friends.
Now the plot is very similar to that of the Michael Bay movies, and there are certainly no surprises in the movie. The Maximals are interesting to see, and Optimus Primal, such a good name, is just as stoic as Optimus, and his gorilla-like swinging across a battle scene in the final third is really fun. Although being okay characters separately, Noah and Elena have little to no chemistry at all. And at one point in the end of the movie, when Elena is nearly killed by infected Air Razor, Noah runs up to her, so relieved that she's not dead, and puts his hand on her face, showing a romantic connection between the pair. But up to then, there was absolutely no sign that they liked each other at all. Only that they shared the experience of being on a wild adventure together. There's certainly not that on-screen chemistry that Shia and Megan Fox had. Elena, however, is a far more interesting character than just being the girlfriend of Shia or Mark Wahlberg's daughter in the last few Transformers films. But Hayley Steinberg's character in 2018's Bumblebee is still by far the best female character the franchise has given us. And Noah, played by Anthony Ramos, is completely forgettable. And that's sort of where the movie falls apart for me. Noah plays such a central role, but his character is not really that likeable. He's just a stock good guy put in a bad situation. And one thing that particularly annoyed me with his character is that every other line would be, "I'm Noah Diaz from Brooklyn," or "Who would have thought Noah Diaz from Brooklyn would be saving the universe?" Or "I thought I was just a nobody from Brooklyn, New York." Now for those in New York, this is enjoyable, as they can relate to the Brooklyn and the Bronx, New York thing. But for anyone outside New York, certainly anyone outside the US, this means little if nothing at all for us. So for a movie with a wide international release, that's hoping to make more money internationally than domestically in the US, I found it rather odd that they were constantly remarking about being from Brooklyn. As for the non-US audience I watched the film with, it meant absolutely nothing. Unicron, I imagine, will be further explored in future sequels as a universal big bad, but in Rise of the Beasts, Scourge is the main antagonist. And he's like Megatron, but without the connection to Optimus. Megatron is Optimus's brother, and there has been a shared history between the pair that makes their physical and philosophical battles more interesting. But Scourge is just a stock baddie, working under a cruel master. He is in fact voiced by Peter Dinklage, which if I didn't know beforehand, I never would have guessed. As Scourge has a robotic, generic, evil Transformers voice, which matches the generic character that Scourge is. And to add to the Transformers tropes in Rise of the Beasts, we had 3 battles with Scourge and the Autobots, where he could have easily killed Optimus, but just walked away. And we also had 2 fake out deaths, with Bumblebee and Mirage seemingly dying and coming back to life. And then Optimus trying to sacrifice himself at the end, which he does in every film. The music is distinct and featured primarily 90s hip hop from New York. And with the exception of Noah Diaz's Mirage armor, which looks awful, the visuals are good, but nothing more than you would expect from a Transformers film. I will say that the cinematography is much better, with less shaky cam than the Michael Bay Transformers films during the action scenes, and there are quite a few horror jumpscare moments. I've scored the plot at a 6, entertainment value scored 7, characters and performances 6, visuals 6, sound scored 7, and the ending scored 7. Meaning my overall rating for Rise of the Beasts is 65%. It's certainly better than Bay's Transformers sequels, worse than Bumblebee, but just doesn't have interesting enough new characters to make me excited for the next Transformers film. If this was the first live-action Transformers film I ever saw, I would probably think it's good. but because we've had so many, and because we've become accustomed to Optimus Prime being a badass, the world-ending space portals, and the slightly comedic but slightly bland human characters, Rise of the Beasts fails to reboot Transformers in any meaningful way, with a passable but not great movie. If we look across the action-adventure genre, Rise of the Beasts sits pretty low on the leaderboard, and I certainly wouldn't strongly recommend seeing it at the cinema. But if you want a fun action film for ages 8 and up, then it's not a bad film to go and see. My rating of 65% is higher than the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, which sits at 52%, whereas the audience score is at a rather high 89%. So perhaps I'm being too harsh based on the audience feedback for the movie. And the IMDB score stands at 6.6 out of 10. So there you have it, my Transformers Rise of the Beast review. Obviously, the Transformers franchise has such a huge fanbase, and the movies have made a ton of money, so Rise of the Beast has the potential to do really well at the box office too. And don't get me wrong, I certainly didn't hate Rise of the Beasts, it just turned out to be exactly what I was expecting from a Transformers film. It didn't surprise me at all. If you enjoyed the film, I can certainly see why as well. The action is good, and the pacing, save from a boggy start, is pretty good too. So have you had a chance to see Rise of the Beasts, and what did you make of it? Do you disagree with my verdict on the film, and think it's a great reboot to the franchise? Let me know in the comments below. It's early days for Film Club, so subscribing really helps the channel to grow. We cover all the best movies and TV shows, as well as the occasional video essays. The next video will be on George Lucas potentially rebuying Star Wars from Disney, and next week I'll be reviewing The Flash. So if any of that interests you, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you, and see you again.